For the past 5 years, Norton Motorcycles has been owned by TVS Motor, a company who are based in Chennai, India. TVS sell over 4 million motorcycles, scooters and three-wheelers per year. Chances are though, if you live in US or Europe, you've probably never heard of them. So I'm going to take a look at TVS Motor and see in particular why are Indian companies buying up British motorcycle brands. I'll also take a look at some automotive success stories and some not so successful and try and answer the question, is Norton Motorcycles in safe hands? So let's get into it. First, let's briefly recap how an Indian company came to acquire one of the most iconic British motorcycle brands. In January 2020, against the backdrop of the global pandemic, Norton Motorcycles went into administration. They had amassed significant debts, but with relatively low sales of bikes, the directors were unable to keep the company afloat. At the time of the administration, which is roughly equivalent to a Chapter 11 filing in the US, Norton Motorcycles was facing legal action over unpaid taxes, and it later emerged that the owner had misused pension funds within the business. Because of all these facts, the administrators acknowledged that Norton was unlikely to be sold as a going concern. Instead, the intellectual property of Norton was up for sale. That means the brand name, the trademark rights and the design of the bikes were available for interested buyers, who at the time were rumoured to include various Chinese firms. However, in April 2020, it was announced that TVS Motors, a company based in Chennai, India, had completed the purchase of Norton. The price they paid was £16 million. In a statement, TVS's joint managing director said, "This is a momentous time for us. Norton is an iconic British brand celebrated across the world and presents us with an immense opportunity to scale globally. We will extend our full support for Norton to regain its full glory in the international motorcycle landscape." So who are TVS Motors? The history of the company goes back over 100 years, and based on revenues, they are the third largest motorcycle company in India. To give you an idea of the size of this company, they sold over 4 million motorcycles, mopeds, scooters and three-wheelers last year. To put that into perspective, in 2024, Harley-Davidson sold a little over 150,000 motorcycles worldwide. So TVS are selling nearly 28 vehicles for every one that Harley does. Now, of course, that's not really a fair comparison, as the two companies are aiming at completely different markets. For example, the cheapest Harley I could find sells in the US for about $10,000. Interestingly, the same model sells in India for $20,000. But the most expensive TVS bike I could find sells for the equivalent of $3,650. Now, of course, the cost of living is much lower in India, but then so are average salaries. I only quote these sales figures just to give you an idea of the scale of TVS. A better comparison might be the Piaggio Group. This Italian-based group sells the Aprilia, Moto Guzzi and Vespa brands, amongst others. So they're also a global company, and in 2024 they sold just under 500,000 motorcycles. Again, that compares to the 4.2 million sold by TVS in the same period. 4 million units per year means that TVS sells a motorcycle, moped, scooter, three-wheeler every 7.5 seconds. And they don't just sell their bikes in India. TVS Motors is the second largest two-wheeler exporter in India, exporting their vehicles to several countries in Latin and South America, as well as Southeast Asia. And in November 2023, TVS announced a partnership with a Swiss company to start importing their bikes into Europe. That began in 2024 with France and Italy, and you can already start to see some reviews of their bikes from European YouTubers. Now, as well as manufacturing bikes, TVS Motor also runs a factory racing team. On the international stage, it competes in the Dakar Rally, currently using this bike, the RTR 450. And in India, they compete in various national, supercross, rally and motorcycle racing championships. TVS Motor is traded on 2 Indian stock exchanges and is the largest company in the TVS Group of companies. TVS Group is a very large multinational conglomerate. As well as TVS Motor, the group has several other divisions, including a logistics company in North America and an e-bike company in Switzerland. In India, the group has 9 listed companies. Most of them are involved as original equipment manufacturers for the automobile industry. The group manufactures parts such as tyres, castings, brake components, fasteners and ignition systems. The group also has a financial services subsidiary, plus it manufactures printers and point-of-sale electronic devices. It also has a textiles division, a bus body manufacturing company and a real estate development division. So clearly this is a very large group of companies with a wide range of activities. But where did TVS come from? What's their history? Well, there's quite an interesting backstory to the company, and it goes back to 1911 in the Tamil Nadu region of southern India. In that year, T.V. Sundaram Iyengar introduced the first bus service from the city of Madurai to Devakoti. This was a distance of about 60 miles, and his was one of the very first bus services in India that ran to a timetable. In addition to offering a cheap ticket for the journey, he also offered his customers a free meal on the bus. From these humble beginnings, he grew the business and developed one of the largest transportation businesses in India with a sizable fleet of trucks and buses. Over the next few decades, TVS branched out into the manufacture of brakes, exhausts and other automotive parts. This included the import of Firestone tyres, and the company also had a General Motors dealership selling Chevrolet cars. There's quite an interesting backstory there, and to increase sales, Sundry offered some of his customers the exclusive use of a Chevy for a week, complete with a chauffeur, free of charge. And that tactic increased his sales, and eventually TVS was the largest distributor of GM vehicles in India. Then, in 1976, TVS set up a plant in Hosur to manufacture mopeds. Its first model was the TVS 50 moped. Hosur is an industrial city in the Tamil Nadu region of India, which today is home to other major manufacturing companies including Stellantis, Ashok Leyland and Caterpillar. 20 years later, in 1989, the company entered into a technical collaboration with Suzuki to produce motorcycles for the Indian market. The relationship continued for 10 years, during which time TVS Suzuki brought out several models such as the Supra, the Samurai, the Shogun and the Shaolin. The relationship with Suzuki continued until 2001. In 2016, TVS started manufacturing the BMW G310R, which was co-developed with BMW Motorrad. And currently it's reported that around 10% of BMW's motorcycles are manufactured by TVS in its Hosur facility. Another important model was launched by TVS in 2017, and this was the Apache RR310, which used the G310R engine in an entirely Indian designed bike. So you can see TVS has about 35 years of experience in manufacturing motorcycles and about 50 years in the manufacture of mopeds. Currently the range includes 18 models with various variants including the TVS Apache, the Ronin 225, the Raider 125, the Jupiter and the XL100. So the question for me is, are they a safe pair of hands for Norton Motorcycles? Now some might say, so what if Norton disappears? It could be argued they've had their time in the spotlight and the world has moved on. And some people link the controversies of the past to the current company and feel that's tainted the brand. However, as you'll know if you watch my channel, I'm passionate about the modern Norton Motorcycle Company, particularly their 961 range of motorbikes. And I for one would be sad if Norton did disappear. It's such an iconic and historic brand. As we know, just because a company is large, it doesn't mean that they're going to continue to have the resources to support multiple brands. As an example, in 2000, General Motors acquired 100% of Saab, which was a Swedish car brand. Some similarities between TVS and Norton. A large multinational company acquires a small niche manufacturer. However, that story didn't end well. Saab wasn't able to build its customer base beyond its niche following. Only 10 years later, GM sold Saab, and a year after that, the Swedish car brand was bankrupt. Now, except there's differences, of course, not least the fact that General Motors at the time was facing its own financial difficulties. However, it did make me wonder about Norton's future with TVS. So first, I spent some time looking for any signs of controversy surrounding TVS Motor. To be fair, there doesn't appear to be much, besides a dispute over a patent, which I guess can happen with any large company. Just as background, in 2008, TVS launched the Flame, a 125cc bike, I think it's pretty funky looking, especially those indicators that are embedded into the tank there. However, Bajaj Auto claimed that there was a patent infringement on the engine design. Bajaj are known in Europe as having a significant investment into KTM and have also partnered with Triumph to produce the 400 and 400X. Bajaj alleged that TVS had copied its digital twin spark ignition technology. Eventually, the dispute was settled out of court and TVS was allowed to continue its sale of the Flame. So then I had a look at the financial figures of TVS Motor to see how well they're run, and the company is doing very well indeed. Last year, the company reported about $245 million of profit and about $175 million profit the year before. Now that profit would have included some losses at Norton of around $40 million. But it's important to note that Norton's losses are due to the investment in new bikes, which I'll cover in a bit. So certainly in the last couple of years, TVS has been very profitable despite making significant investments into Norton. As I'm sure you've heard, recently KTM have been facing financial difficulties. Now I've not done a huge amount of research into the KTM story, but from what I understand, one problem they face is they just couldn't sell enough bikes and they had a huge build-up of inventory. And they couldn't sell that inventory at a profit. Now I don't see that same problem happening at TVS. Their stock is turning over every 20 days, which is in line with the year before. Also, they're sitting on about $57 million of cash. So they certainly seem to be a well-run company, and that's backed up by their share price, which has remained fairly stable, at least over the last couple of years. As well as demonstrating their commitment to Norton through those significant investments, TVS have also stated their intention to develop the brand. So there was a recent investors call and the directors reiterated their intention to launch new Norton motorcycles by the end of this financial year. Their financial year ends in March, so I assume this means we'll see new bikes by March 2026. And the investors call highlighted that the new products are likely to be seen in Q4 2025, so not too much longer to wait. And you can be sure that when that happens, I'll cover it right here on my channel. Now there's a ton of work that goes into researching a video like this, so if you're finding it interesting, I'd really appreciate if you could ping the like button for me. That'll help this video spread out so that more people can find it. Thank you. Alright, now we're moving into the next section, and that's the trend of Indian companies investing into the UK, particularly in the automotive sector. Royal Enfield has been manufactured in India for a long time now. Additionally, BSE Motorcycles are now owned by Mahindra and Tata owns Jaguar Land Rover. So the TVS Motor acquisition of Norton would appear to be part of a larger trend. Let's have a look at that now. As a bit of background, trade with India represents less than 2% of the UK's economy. However, that is growing. Investment into the UK increased from 16 billion in 2013 to 36 billion in 2022. And in the past few weeks, a free trade agreement has been signed between India and the UK. This led the managing director of TVS Motor Company to state that this agreement creates large opportunities for Indian companies like ours to expand further and access new markets. I would also add that by buying Norton, TVS were also able to add an internationally recognised and premium motorcycle brand to their portfolio. And I think that's something that they lacked in the past. And I think that might explain a little bit why Indian companies are buying up these British motorcycle brands. I think some of these brands like Norton and BSA are internationally recognised. So instead of entering a market with an unrecognised name, they can introduce or even reintroduce these established brands into new markets. Also, he said, our British brand Norton will launch later this year, and this agreement will help us scale faster and leverage common supply chains. Here he was referencing the decision to launch Norton into India later in 2025. So certainly a lot to watch out for in the next couple of months. So to summarise, TVS seem to be a well-managed and financially stable company with deep pockets. Now this means that they should be able to continue their investments into Norton to introduce those new models that the brand needs. TVS Motor are also part of a long-established and diverse group of companies. They have experience working with other brands, particularly BMW and Suzuki, and they certainly seem to have a good reputation. Finally, Norton seems to be a good fit into their portfolio of brands. So all in all, do I think Norton is in safe hands with TVS Motor? Based on all that, yes I do. And if you'd like to know more about what Norton is up to, you can watch this video right here.